viewers, and welcome back to the Tobago Updates morning show at 7:10 a.m. As we continue here this morning, we start the conversation. On set with us, Councillor Tashia Grace Boris, Secretary with responsibility for the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation. And yes, we're just at the tail end of the recently concluded Jazz Festival. And we're going to chat a little bit about much more than music. And that was the Tobago Jazz Experience 2023. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julien.
So as we get the conversation started, we want to start with probably your ratings in the first instance on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. Let's start with what would you give for that overall rating in the first instance, and then we will start to discuss the details.
Right. So in terms of, I'm talking from the customer perspective here.
Yes.
I think I would give the jazz experience a solid 9 out of 10. Yes. In terms of me being behind the scenes and seeing all of this stuff, I know there are a couple of things that could have been done better or differently, because we had a number of challenges behind the scenes. But overall, I think that the customer didn't experience those challenges, and I'm happy for that. So I would give it a solid 9 out of 10.
All right. So as we get the conversation going, the Jazz Experience, Jazz 2023 to be more specific, would have kick-started on Thursday with the Gospel Night. Yeah. We want to start off there. That would have been a new introduction for 2023. Tell us a little bit about that, and how did that eventually turn out?
So when we started having the conversation about jazz and the return of jazz, this conversation actually started in February of last year. And one of the things that I indicated when I came into office is that we wanted to reimagine, retool, evolve the product post-COVID. So we wanted people to see significant changes to what they used to. And one of those changes we looked at was the addition of a gospel night, because we recognized that the gospel genre is not necessarily represented when you look at how the experience has gone for the past few years and the incarnation of the festival before that. So we included this gospel night because we wanted to ensure that all the persons who enjoy good music, they enjoy good jazz music, also had the opportunity to come out and hear their international stars from that particular segment of the music industry, and to be able to enjoy the experience even if they don't attend any one of the other nights that are on the calendar. So we planned this gospel night. It was put on a Thursday because we recognize that Tobago has a large population of Adventists. So we didn't want to put the show on a Friday night, which might have been troublesome for them to actually attend. So we put it on the Thursday night to be able to ensure that they could support, and that persons from Trinidad could kind of make a long weekend as well. So it was strategic in that makeup. And then we had that first incarnation of the gospel night taking place at Shaw Park. And I must say, it really was a Holy Land experience.
Yes, seeing some of the images there on screen, and it's amazing in such short order how people immediately conformed to the dress code of all white, etc., in terms of the response in relation to the Holy Night. Well, off to an excellent start, and I had the opportunity to be there on that night. And what was very interesting to me is seeing the groupings that were comfortable standing and being right in front of the stage, and those who were able to sit to taking the full experience. We then moved on to Friday's activities. Which would have taken place at Buku.
So a new activity again.
Correct. So, tell us a little bit about that one.
So seafood and jazz, Buku Boardwalk, Buku Integrated Facility. One of the things that we talk about when we say much more than music is that you're not just coming to the jazz experience to go to the concerts, but you're also taking a trip around the island of sorts. So we started in Scarborough at Shaw Park Cultural Complex, and then we headed down to the west of the island in Buku for that seafood and jazz incarnation, which featured mostly local acts, and really that kind of relaxed atmosphere. You're not inside, you're out in the open, it's beachside. Because one of the things we recognize is that when we had to change the venue in terms of what people have known for the Pigeon Point all of these years, is that one of the things people appreciate about the experience is being by the seaside and being in a natural environment. So that the Buku Seafood and Jazz was really to kind of give them that taste again. And you put them in a totally different space, because we also want to make people see that there are different options options in terms of venues to host different types of events in Tobago. So taking it down to Buku gave persons an opportunity to go down to that side of the island and to see what that area gives. And I must say that the response was absolutely overwhelming in terms of the number of persons who came out. The quality of the performances, again, was particularly high. Persons have been messaging me and they said they thoroughly enjoyed themselves for a new event, an event that literally kind of started advertising maybe 10 days ago. The response was really overwhelming.
Tell us as well, one of the things I would have noted being down there on Friday as well is the matter of what appeared to be a lot of visitors to the island.
Yes, certainly.
If for some reason that attempted to attract them, is it probably the natural connection with Buku being postured in terms of one of those villages you go to with Sunday school? What were your thoughts?
I think a couple of things came into play there. We just came out of Easter. So we had the return of the Buku Village Council hosting the annual Tobago goat and crab races. And then the very next weekend, you kind of had the jazz experience taking place. So I think those persons who may not have been able to come to Tobago over the Easter period, because, you know, Easter is usually sold out in Tobago, might have said, okay, if I can't come for Easter, let me come for jazz. So they were able to book their tickets and come and really have a great experience. So I think that also played into it, the nostalgia of those events. Yeah.
And I like the fact that it also catered particularly, you could have come early enough if you wanted to bring along children and so on. As my daughter said to me, I'll be going to that event. Which event? Boy. So her question was, which event can she go to in this whole lineup?
Yes.
But very, very good in terms of being able to cater to that family. Because I saw a lot of families out as well in the mix. We then transitioned to what appeared to be a private event on the jazz calendar. Tell us about that in terms of the Mount Irvin activity hosted.
So Mount Irvin Jazz has been a staple on the jazz calendar for a number of years. And this is a standalone event that is hosted by the Mount Irvin Beach Hotel. I had the pleasure of speaking to the manager on Sunday, and he told me it was another phenomenal success for the hotel. The jazz purists flock to Mount Irvin Jazz because they get that beat side once again, and they get those seminal jazz artists, local acts who really have them jazzing it out on the beach, the sand in their toes, the seaside there, the ambience. So, I mean, that event really kind of attracts a more mature crowd, but it's also good for if you have families as well, because the children could play on the beach, they could still be there, you could watch them. People come with their picnic baskets, their tables, they set up their lineman spots. So it seems to be a sojourn of sorts for some Trinidadians, because there are some of them who swear by Mount Irvin Jazz, and they come every year and they bring their huge groups. And that group usually supports, as a rule, the Sunday International Night for jazz. So there's no competition between the private event being hosted by Mount Irvin and Speyside, which we host, because those two groups of people really choose to go to one, and then they may come up to Speyside later, or they go to the Saturday at Mount Irvin and they support the Sunday event. So it really is just more space for more jazz, and we're happy for private entities like Mount Irvin to continue to contribute activities like this to the calendar, which encourages visitors to come and encourages visitors to stay at their hotel, because that activity really ensures that Mount Irvin Bay Hotel ranks high in terms of room occupancy for that particular weekend.
All right, and as you would have mentioned, we transitioned into Speyside for, if my memory serves me well, for the first time, a fee being attached.
Not the first time.
Not the first time, right. But a fee being attached to what persons may have grown accustomed to initially.
As a free event.
As a free event.
Yes.
But apparently the response still very overwhelming. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. Now the thing is, people, damned if you do and damned if you don't. When people want to talk about, okay, how much money the THA is spending on this activity or that activity, this event or that event, it always comes down to a money consideration. And there's a group of people who will always jump up and say, oh, we're spending too much money on events, and we should go pave roads and do things with the hospital and do things with the education system. The reality is that how government accounting works is that whatever money is allocated towards tourism is to do tourism-related activities. Whatever money is allocated to health is to do health-related activities. So the money that we're spending on these things is allocated to tourism, to drive events tourism, as part of our tourism trust, yes? So, but what we wanted to do was actually alter the business model quite a bit for the jazz experience this year. So instead of the THA just writing a check for the total cost of all the activities, we said, look, we're going to give some money to cater for upfront expenses. is. But we have to begin to charge for this product because, one, it's a very high quality product. Two, it's a product that is not cheap. I mean, even the prices that we put out for the kind of acts that we were able to put on stage, when you look at world prices and look at what you would pay outside, look at what you would pay in the region, you're paying in US dollars and you're paying, you know, if you travel to St. Lucia Jazz or any one of those other jazz festivals, you pay a lot of money for the quality of acts that they put on stage. So I don't think it was too much to ask persons, hey, you know, this is a good quality product, you're going to come. You know what the product gives. We're not asking you to buy cotton bag. You know what the product gives. You know what to expect. You know what kind of experience you're going to have. So, you know, help us sort out the bills a little bit and just contribute something to that. And also, despite the fact that we charged, we also had 3 instances where persons could have bought tickets at a discounted price. We had 2 payday specials back-to-back, one at the end of the month in March and one in the first week of April. So that was $100 off tickets, and persons were able to purchase in Tobago and Trinidad. And the Friday before Jazz, because of all the stress with the licensing officers, we know people were stressed out about all the actions during the week. We said, hey, you know what? Let's see if we can give another discount for persons to purchase tickets. So we were able to give a 25% discount on tickets that day so that persons were able to purchase and come to the jazz experience without having to pay full price. And we felt that those were opportunities that we gave people to really come out and, you know, celebrate with us and enjoy the festival. And I am pleased to see that the turnout was not affected by the fact that we asked people to pay, because, and I could say without fear of contradiction, that the persons who attended Speyside Jazz thoroughly enjoyed themselves.
All right. Viewers, have no fear. We're chatting Jazz 2023. Don't worry, we're going to go on. We're going to hear about International Night, chat a little bit about those deals and a number of the other areas as spoken about in advance as we assess and we do our review of Jazz 2023. But at this point, we just want to remind you, stay tuned, stay connected. We will be right back, and to remind you that this is your opportunity to share the live, share the live, share the live.
Put a smile on your face.
Yes, good morning, viewers. It is 7:23 a.m. and welcome back to the Tobago Updates Morning Show. I am Julien Skeete. We're coming to you here live from the Port Mall in Scarborough, Tobago. As we continue the conversation this morning with Councillor Tashia Grace Boris, Secretary with responsibility for the Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation. We just left off at the Speyside, and we want to dive straight into the final night. International night that took place on parade grounds. Much contention with regards to the choice of venue, etc. Once again, it would appear, again, from even me being there, that the numbers were certainly impressive. Tell us a little bit about the outcome of that night.
So I take all blame for us not explaining fully the reason for that shift. Now, one of the things that everybody would agree is that Pigeon Point is one of the most beautiful scenic venues on the island of Tobago. However, one of the complaints always coming out of the jazz experience every year is the horrors that people suffer to get into the venue and to get out of the venue after the show. So I felt that the one thing we had to fix was that. In addition to that, when we looked at Pigeon Point this year, now remember we had a lot of weather challenges last year that impacted on the grounds at Pigeon Point, because remember, Pigeon Point is an environmentally sensitive area as well. So when you talk about putting that massive infrastructure that we had at parade grounds down at Pigeon Point, we would have tremendous challenges. We would have had to do a number of earthworks to repack the earth, to claim back some of the land that was taken back by the swamp because of us being closed for 2 years during COVID and that kind of thing, and those kinds of events not being really held on that area of the facility. And because we took all of that into consideration, we felt that the only next place that was able to hold the amounts of people that we wanted to hold was parade grounds. The additional benefit that putting the international night in that space was for us to be able to ease those traffic logistic nightmares that we would normally have for the experience. And I think that it worked beautifully. I mean, even from Speyside the night before, I was shocked to get into Speyside within that 45 minutes. There was no no traffic on the road, no parking on the sides of the road. And I watched the traffic for the entire evening, and I saw people able to seamlessly come in, seamlessly exit at the end of the show. People were messaging me and said they were back in town in 40 minutes. There was no traffic to get out of Speyside. So that when International Night came, we really wanted to ensure that people had an easy experience to get to the venue and also an easy experience to leave. And in the middle, have a phenomenal experience with the layout, with the cast, with the quality of the performances, with the ambience. Yes, so I think that some people didn't even think that we would have had that overwhelming support from persons. But I always felt that the experience was not just one for Tobago persons to enjoy, but we're really kind of building products that we can get people to come into Tobago to experience and spend their money in Tobago. So that was the focus really of having the jazz experience and ensuring that this year the experience was one to have.
Tell us a little bit, Chief Secretary spoke to the issue in terms of where ticket sales were at generally before the event. Where did that end up? And of course, we know the usual challenge that jazz is not necessarily in its current form designed for surplus figures just yet.
Right.
One of the things that the Chief Secretary also spoke to is that it is not necessarily going to continue with this kind of exact configuration.
Yeah.
What are the plans and projections in terms of going forward? Because as excellent as it came off, it still came in at a cost to the Tobago House of Assembly.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So as the Chief said, we spent about $3 million up front, and that $3 million was to secure the international acts, pay down mobilization on some of the critical and key pieces of the build-out. So you looked at the stage. When you look at the stage and the amount of lights and the configuration of that stage, that's not cheap. You know, so there was some upfront costs that were incurred and that had to be taken care of in advance of the festival. One of the things that we had to look at also was ensuring that whatever the ticket sales look like, that those ticket sales would now help pay down on some of the expenses incurred after the fact. So we were at 60% of printed tickets sold before the experience. Now, what I was told in previous years is that usually ticket sales would pick up in the day or two before the experience starts, and then there's a huge amount of door ticket sales on the day of the event because people feeling all the vibes, they don't want to spend their money just yet, they're not sure what's going to happen. And I think because the gospel night kicked off so beautifully and we had so much overwhelming response that people started to get into the feeling, get into the groove, get into the vibe. So ticket sales certainly picked up that Friday before, and that Saturday, that Sunday, there was a significant amount of sales at the door. I don't have the final figures just yet, but what I would say is that the support across all four events was certainly overwhelming.
All right. I want you to tell us a little bit, just as we run down with the time for Jazz 2023. Some spoke, and we're seeing some people on the live speaking about the other private events that took place as part of the lineup. They may not have been on the calendar, but private entities, for example, they're referring to Anchor Bar and Grill would have been one that took place in terms of a new Pan Jazz.
Right.
Can we see these elements in terms of private entities being integrated once again to take on somewhat of the burden, or rather the promotion or the growth of our island in going forward with jazz?
Well, that's ideal because the THA doesn't want to be the biggest event promoter on the island anymore. What has to happen, though, is that communication has to come to the division and to the Festivals Commission, rather, because if something else is happening somewhere, the thing that we can do is help promote it. So if we know that you are having a private event, but it's open to the public, you're having something at a space, and you want us to promote it, then certainly we can do that. I only found out about what Anchor Bar was doing. Somebody sent me a screenshot of the flyer, and I was happy because I'm like, okay, this is something else in this space. This is something that could take place, so it doesn't matter what the jazz experience turns into next year. Anchor Bar could still go ahead and have their Pan and Jazz. Mount Irvin will still have their jazz on the beach. Buku could still have their Buku Seafood and Jazz because that wasn't done by the Festivals Commission. That was done by the Buku Integrated Facility, which is under the Office of the Chief Secretary. So these things can happen outside of what the experience formally gives. And ideally, I don't want to speak too much about what the evolution of the product would look like because those discussions, although they have started, they have not been cemented as yet. But we're looking at One of the ideas on the table is a Cllr type event where you have a large open space. You maybe have multiple stages and several acts going on at similar times, so people can choose to be over here with Afrobeats, but be over there with local stuff, and be over here with the international, and really have a huge influx of persons into one event space, and maybe for one day only. That's one idea. We have other ideas in terms of how we would look at the business model of the jazz, whether or not we should retain rights to the jazz experience and then have a private promoter just simply come in and execute and manage the experience so that they now determine how it looks like. They will do the market research to determine what is not out there as a product and what they can sell as a new product. There are a number of options available to us at this time. So the discussions are going to continue after.
All right, excellent. And as we have you on, in our last 2 minutes, we also want to chat about the direction in terms of the Division of Tourism and focus with the Tobago House of Assembly. And kudos indeed for what by far, in terms of comment, feedback that are being received, persons in attendance, persons who would have had the opportunity to be here, in terms of the execution of jazz, to you, the Chief Secretary, and your entire team, John Arnold, and the team out there being involved. What we want to also look at now, because we know the reality is, you do one good event, you execute well, and before you can even take a deep breath, we want to know what's happening next. Right. So tell us, particularly as we're looking towards, we're now in April, and heading into what everybody's looking towards as our Heritage Festival. As the next event. Tell us a little bit about those upcoming.
So we have come full circle in terms of our events year, because full restrictions were lifted in April of last year. So our first event was Heritage. So now we're back. All events, Heritage, our launch for Tobago Carnival, we had Independence, we had Republic Day, we had Blue Food, we had Tobago Carnival, we had February Carnival, we had Easter, now we have Jazz. We've had a whole entire year of events. And for me, sitting in the chair, it has been a very steep learning curve. I see all the criticisms, I see all the negativity and stuff. And I mean, I just want people to know that I want them to trust the process, because I love proving people wrong. And I think that Tobago Carnival, Tobago Jazz has really proven that, Tobago could rise to the occasion. And that's the most important thing for me. It's fine to give us constructive criticism because we look at everything. We look at everything. People spoke a lot about the marketing for jazz, and a lot of people may not have been satisfied with what they saw. They may not have been happy with what they saw. But I did indicate, these are young people doing these things. These are young graphic artists, young social media people, and we have to give them the opportunity to learn. We have to give them the opportunity to put themselves out there and present their product. And if they can do better, we would certainly encourage them to do better based on the constructive criticism that comes. But having been in this seat for an entire full year of events, now I have a greater appreciation of what works and what doesn't work. So that, again, for the Heritage Festival this year, you may see some changes. I don't want to put them out in this space too early, but the festival in how it's made up may not be the best setup of the product that we can have. We see opportunities for partnerships with stakeholders outside of the division and outside of Festivals Commission. We see opportunity for more stakeholders to get involved and evolve their respective products. So it's not just the same things being recycled year after year after year. So what we want to see is that evolution of the product. What we want to see is more persons coming into the space and celebrating what heritage does and what heritage means for us. And then even while I was sitting in the jazz, my mind was on Carnival, because you don't ever get to take your foot off the gas. It's from one thing to the next. Because people have to understand that all of these events feed into each other. It's an entire ecosystem, it's an entire industry of events that we're trying to push on the island of Tobago to ensure that persons always have a reason to come to Tobago. So when I'm thinking about Tobago Carnival, I'm thinking, okay, it's time for us to make it very clear what the carnival is going to look like this year, what people can look forward to, what are the aspects of the carnival that the THA will no longer be managing and we'll be willing to put out for private promoters to take over and execute, what aspects of the carnival the THA will be managing, what competition is going to look like, if we're going to have any new competitions in the horizon for persons who want to get involved by the way of having mass bands and stuff. What are some of the incentives we may be able to offer, or what are some of the systems and policies we could put in place to encourage more persons to take part in mass and to bring mass bands? focus being on traditional mass and ensuring that those aspects are not lost in all the mix. The idea that our Tobago Carnival really is to be an international carnival, because we started with inviting our Grenada contingent last year, and now we have to extend invitations to different countries who have expressed interest in sending their persons to now come and showcase their indigenous mass on the streets of Tobago, so that somebody who's looking on at the parade is not just seeing Tobago mass or seeing Trinidad style mass, but they're seeing international mass, and they don't have to look on Google or they don't have to see it on YouTube. They can come in Tobago and see it live and direct. So all of these things are on my mind. Part of that is really ensuring that the marketing, we get that part right. You understand? Ttal was responsible for the marketing of the carnival, which was different to what happened for jazz, where festivals was responsible for the marketing. And, you know, certainly the different entities have their different styles in how they choose to treat with their product. But certainly what we will want going forward is that further cementing of the collaboration to ensure that we get the marketing right. Yes, so my mind is already on those things, among all the other things that the division has to do and manage on a daily basis from a policy and a strategic direction standpoint. But in my wrap-up, I'll just say that I'm just happy that our visitors came and enjoyed themselves. I'm happy that we had a largely incident-free jazz experience. I'm happy that our Tobagonian persons were proud of the product that we were able to put on. All of our headline acts did an marvelous job in coming and giving their best and putting their best foot forward. Our local acts also, I must commend across all days of the festival. And I think that's demonstration of how much talent exists in Tobago space. And we have to continue to encourage our talent. We have to continue to create avenues, to create stages for them to display their talent, and to ensure that, you know, the next big thing coming out of Tobago may be another gospel act, maybe another act, another genre of music, another soca style. But I'm happy to see that, you know, everything went well despite all of the challenges that we had in terms of the planning and execution, and despite the naysayers as well, because we will always have naysayers, but we continue to try our best and we continue to try to exceed people's expectations.
All right, and thank you very much there. We're just out of time, but thank you so much, Councillor Tashia Grace Burris, giving us that perspective in relation to the review for Jazz of 2023. And also speaking to what we can look forward to upcoming, the Heritage Festival and the full lineup right down to Tobago Carnival. Forgive me if I dive straight to Tobago Carnival. It's no secret I'm a lover of the soca music and enjoying those times of year. You see how the smile broadens on my face at this time. My minister at church would probably not be too pleased. I'm working on it, Rev. I'm trying my best. All right? But certainly the comments coming in on the live, persons definitely sending their commendations indeed. In terms of proud of the division, proud of you, commendations with regards to the Jazz of 2023. So by and large, I think there's a high level of satisfaction in the Tobago space and in fact beyond for those who would have had the opportunity to enjoy Jazz 2023. All right, viewers, we want to thank you so much for the continued love and support, and more importantly, we want to thank you for choosing to stay here with us, the Tobago Updates Morning Show. This is our reminder to you to share the live, share the live, share the live.